Hello, my name is Keith Vukasinovich and welcome to my channel. So you're considering doing your PhD. Cool, I understand. I'm a doctoral student right now myself at University of Cincinnati in the counselor education program. It's definitely a big commitment, but let me give you some things to think about before you decide on whether or not you want to pursue a PhD and what might be some options for you. Let me be clear from the beginning of this. I am not anti-PhD. As you heard me say just a moment ago, I'm pursuing my own doctoral degree right now at 52 years old. Long story, different conversation for another time. That said, you got to ask yourself when you're pursuing your doctoral degree, what is it that you're wanting to get out of this? Some career expectations that are pretty common when it comes to doing PhDs is that you're hoping to either do research, to teach, or to work in your field, and this is going to advance you in some way, shape, or form. Another reasonable consideration is whether or not this is going to increase your income. Yeah, there are folks who like to do PhDs just because of their love of the topic. Most of us, yeah, don't have that silver spoon and need to figure out whether or not we can afford to do this particular degree. So you're going to be asking yourself a question like, what are the opportunity costs versus the opportunities that are opened by having this PhD? And that's going to require that you spend some time considering the impact of adding an advanced degree to you in your particular career path. The old expression in the tail industry is measure twice and cut once. Because once you start down this rabbit hole, you're probably not going to want to change in midstream. And if you do, it's going to be difficult. So you got to ask yourself a question simply is how am I going to fit this into my life? What is my plan? This is a huge time commitment. As some good friend once told me, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you've got to be looking at this from the long haul in terms of how you're going to get this done. Another reasonable consideration is how are you going to eat while you're doing your PhD? This may well be a 40, 50-hour a week commitment. Holding down a job on top of that is not really realistic unless you've got an incredibly flexible life. I do some school-based services. I have a private practice. I do some teaching. And kind of muddled together a path to keep everybody fed at my house while I'm on this journey. But you got to figure out what that looks like for you. Reasonably, I would say to anybody, you don't just jump into doing a PhD. You need to spend 6, 9, maybe even a year, 6 to 9 months, maybe even a year, considering how are you going to do this? Where do you want to do this? And how does it fit into your career goals and what you want your life to look like? If you can't put in the time to do a reasonable deep dive in investigating programs and looking at the options, the differences between maybe a research-oriented tier one school or a tier two or tier three school that might focus just on teaching, or the difference between a brick and mortar or an online degree and what kind of career outcomes that's going to produce for you, if you can't put in the time to do that sort of research and evaluation beforehand, you probably don't have the commitment, the time to do an entire PhD program. Because we're talking about conservatively 3 years of your life that's going to be nonstop this. Might be 4, might be 5, could be 6 or 7 years for some people to be able to finish their PhD. So if you can't put in the time to research and make a reasonable decision, chances are it might be difficult to actually finish that degree. Again, not anti-PhD, just want you to go into these sorts of things with a clear head and realistic expectations about what this journey is going to look like for you. Last but not least, think about what the industry you're doing your doctoral degree in looks like in terms of demographics. You need to be able to read the room because if the room you're trying to become the next doctor, whoever, in is filled with people who look just like you're probably going to need to find some way to distinguish yourself from everybody else in the room. Congratulations, you found your herd. But now you're competing with that same herd for work. So it isn't just about finding out which PhDs are the ones that are actually leading to jobs. You can find a slew of videos right now with people on this negative stuff about why not to do a PhD, this, that, and the other. And a lot of times they didn't do the research. They went into a crowded field. They found themselves in a herd afterwards that was hyper competitive and they didn't want to do the work. So now their attitude is, oh, a PhD is no good. No, you didn't do your homework beforehand. And now you want to blame the outcome on your failure to investigate it thoroughly from the very beginning. That's a little bass backwards. So yes, find your herd, but find a way to make yourself a unicorn in that herd. So if you're going into a field where 75% of people look just like you, Find some way to make yourself unique and special from the other 75 people in the room. This is a spot where a lot of people typically say something to themselves like, I'm going to outwork everybody in the room. Seriously, if you're in a room full of folks who all have PhDs, you're already in a room full of hard workers. Yeah, maybe you are the hardest worker in the room. Chances are you're not. Chances are you're in a room full of hard-working folks who are used to a significant amount of input in hopes of a delayed gratification. So, yeah, going in with your only inherent difference being that you're a hard worker, that's a recipe for disaster. Find ways to develop skill sets that are unique even within your group. If you can't spend time doing these sorts of things, then this is going to be a very frustrating process. Look, I want you to get your PhD. I want you to enjoy the journey and the outcome, but that's going to require some upfront work and putting in the time to make a special effort to consider what you want that journey to look like. Again, Keith Vukacinovich, welcome to the channel. Do me the favor of hitting a like and a subscribe if you want to hear more about the doctoral journey. Peace.